For most of your campaign, your party is going to be speaking in Common. The most common language is Common. Go figure. Then, depending on your character, you can maybe speak something like Elvish or Dwarvish to talk to elves and dwarves respectively. However, you might want to pick something other than these languages. Maybe because someone in your party already can speak that language, or because you already know 2 languages, so you want to pick a new and exciting third one. But the issue you run into is who even speaks these languages. We got you covered though, because we're going to tell you who speaks these languages and how they could come in handy in your campaign. The first thing before you pick your languages would be to quickly ask your DM if it makes sense to learn that language. If you're not going to be with a lot of edgy bad guys like devils, maybe Infernal isn't the best language for that campaign. But that's okay. Find what ones would work for the story your DM is brewing up, and if you can't use anything that you wanted, you can always do it in the next campaign. Or if you really just don't care, pick the language anyways. Maybe it makes sense for your character's lore and you want to take the chance that this language might come up, and that's totally fine. Do it. To start things off, let's talk about Abyssal. Abyssal is a language of demons in D&D and is written in an infernal script. You might be able to meet some cultists who speaks Abyssal, but it's basically just all demons. Demons are mostly found in the Abyss and in any of the 9 layers of hell. They aren't the most common thing to see in the overworld, but it is possible. Quick fun fact is that lower ranked demons are said to sound like the barking of canines, while upper ranked demons sound like soft droning ocean waves mingled with the violence of a swarm of angry hornets. That's unpleasant. Let's keep up the trend of spooky scary bad guys with this next language, Infernal. This language is mainly spoken by devils and tieflings, along with some clerics here and there who just try to learn it for fun. Just like the demons, devils are going to mainly be found in the 9 layers of Bator. Not the best vacation spot, but boy are the flights cheap during this time of year. There are a lot of lower ranked demons you can talk to, or powerful ones like Tiamat or Zerial. These aren't going to be in the overworld a whole lot. However, devils' lawful evilness might be easier to talk to or strike a deal with than some chaotic evil demons. Enough with the baddies for a bit. Let's talk about the Celestial language. No shocker with this, but Celestial is spoken by Celestials. Makes sense. Celestials are basically the counterpart to fiends, with all of them having some sort of good alignment. Celestials have a bunch of different types like angels and unicorns. They can typically be found in the upper planes, any heavenly places too depending on the campaign. Celestials work for higher beings, so if you have some mission where you're looking for a god, helping yours like the noble paladin you are, or even trying to fight one, this language could be pretty helpful. Celestials are going to be wherever the gods are at. Next up is the good old language of deep speech. This language is spoken by aberrations like beholders. They also know common or other languages, but they primarily speak in deep speech. This language is very complex as it has a lot of tone and inflections, along with body language, smells, trilling, gurgling, and a bunch of other wild things that are hard to do for most people. And I thought my high school language class was tricky. It also doesn't have any sort of written language. These fellows come from the outer planes. However, in your campaign, they can be found in underwater caves or some evil hideout. They typically have a bunch of cultists doing their bidding. Sadly though, these cultists are mainly just spoken to in their own tongue. Beholders and other beasts similar are some very iconic monsters in D&D to have be your villain. However, since they mainly can just also speak common, it's probably not the best language to learn. It sounds wicked though. What would Dungeons & Dragons be without dragons? With that being said, let's Fusro our way into the next language, Draconic. This language is one of the coolest in my opinion. It is spoken by dragons, wyverns, lizard folk, and troglodytes, along with dragonborn and kobolds, who both have their own distinct dialects of it, which is a lot more than the other languages I listed had. Draconic has a lot of hard syllables, especially at the start and end of their words, accompanied with a lot of hissing and sounds that sound like you're clearing your throat. This language would be super useful in a campaign because dragonborns and lizard folk are a pretty common race to run into along your journey. Plus, you can speak to dragons, which is freaking awesome. Enough said. Now let's talk about Primordial. This language is most commonly spoken by primordials and elementals. Majority of primordials are locked away or something similar for fighting the gods, but there are a lot of elementals that are still around. These elementals are based off the 4 elements, respectively air, water, earth, and fire. These can be an awesome battle for your players, or even a super useful ally if you can speak primordial. Elementals are going to be more common speakers of this language, but this language is not the most used. Maybe don't pick it unless you're feeling like Avatar Aang dealing with all these elements, which could be pretty cool. Fae are all things magical and naturey. Fae are things like fairies and dryads, red caps, and so much more. There are literally so many variations of Fae. These little troublemakers are super fun to have in your campaign, even if they're not the main focus of the story. This language would be perfect for the nature-loving druids and rangers in your party. Fae can be used in so many versatile ways, even if you're just trekking through the forest. If you got an extra language slot, I'd highly recommend picking up Sylvan so you can talk to these fun troublemakers. We're gonna finish this video off with Undercommon. Undercommon is a trade language that's mainly spoken by the smarter races of the Underdark, which is the underground society in caves, basically, that all the bad guys hang out in. Undercommon is actually a language that started off as a language that drow slaves would use to communicate, which later became vastly used amongst many others. Just like Sylvan, this language is also written in the Elvish script, despite being way different than Elvish. This language is a pretty popular one, as it can be found spoken by Aboleth, Cloakers, Delvers, Drow, Dwarves, Kobold, and a lot more that I didn't mention. Mainly used by Drow though. If you're a shady character and want to hit up the black market for some illegal merch, this language would be perfect to learn, especially if you're going to be spending some time in the Underdark. The housing market is actually pretty cheap down there, but it's kind of like a Gotham cheap. The things aren't the best. If I could speak any of these languages, trust me, I would totally bust out an awesome outro in Draconic, but I cannot, so English is what I'm gonna stick with. I hope this video helps show you what languages would be useful to use or add on to your characters just for lore. If you like this linguistic video, give us a like and subscribe. And also make sure to follow us on Twitter and Instagram. And we're live on Reddit, Twitch, and YouTube, so make sure to check those out. Have a good session and keep on rolling, guys.